What if the most common path to marriage in America today was considered a moral failing just 2 generations ago? Have we all been fooled? Has the sexual revolution, the very thing we call freedom, completely sabotaged our ability to form stable, lasting love? Has it wrecked our emotional and mental health? Back in the 1950s and 60s, the idea of a bride who wasn't a virgin was a whispered taboo. Today, it's the overwhelming norm. Consider this. Studies of women who married in the 2000s show that having 10 or more premarital partners gives you a 33% chance of being divorced within 5 years, the highest rate of any group. Meanwhile, women who waited until marriage had a divorce rate of just 6%. And yet, some estimates suggest that for Americans getting married today, the number who have had sex before marriage is nearly 90%. In just 2 generations, we've adopted a behavior that is statistically linked to marital collapse. How did something once condemned by the majority become the lived experience of nearly everyone? And what are the hidden consequences of this new reality? Today, we're going to break down the key historical events, the technological breakthroughs, and the hard data that explain this dramatic change. We'll explore what it really means for our relationships, our happiness, and our future. When a society changes this fast, it's almost never accidental. These shifts don't happen because millions of people independently wake up one day and decide the same thing. They happen when ideas, technology, incentives, and culture quietly realign over time. And to truly understand what's happening, you have to zoom out far enough to see the system behind the behavior. That's where most people get stuck. We're usually shown the outcomes, not the causes. Modern media thrives on headlines, outrage, and simplified explanations. Complex social transformations get reduced to talking points or moral arguments, with very little history or data. Without that context, it's easy to confuse trends with progress, or miss the consequences entirely. That's exactly why platforms like CuriosityStream exist. CuriosityStream is a streaming service built entirely around documentaries that break down the deeper forces shaping society, culture, psychology, and human behavior. Instead of reacting to the news cycle, it focuses on long-term explanations, how ideas evolve, how incentives shift, and how history repeats itself. Created by the founder of the Discovery Channel, CuriosityStream is used by millions of viewers worldwide who want substance instead of sensationalism. If you have a curious mind and want deeper context, check out CuriosityStream using the link in the description below. The monthly cost is negligible, less than what most people spend on a single cup of coffee, for unlimited access to everything on the platform. To understand just how monumental sex in America has changed, we have to go back in time. Picture America in the 1960s. The cultural script was clear. You meet, you court, you marry, and only then does the physical relationship begin. For women especially, virginity at marriage wasn't just an ideal, it was a powerful social expectation. Polling from that era reveals a profoundly different moral landscape. In 1969, a Gallup poll found that 2/3 of Americans believed premarital sex was morally wrong. Then, the world changed. The sexual revolution of the late 60s and 70s wasn't just a media story, it was a genuine social earthquake. By 1985, the numbers had completely flipped. For the first time, a Gallup poll found a majority of Americans, 52%, said premarital sex was morally okay. That number has continued to climb, with recent polls showing over 70% of Americans now find it morally acceptable. This change in attitude is mirrored perfectly in behavior. While reliable data from the mid-20th century is sparse, studies show a significant portion of women who married in the 1970s were still virgins. But by the 2000s, that number had plummeted to just 5%. The exception has officially become the rule. So, what happened? This wasn't one single event, but a perfect storm of forces that permanently altered our social fabric. First, and maybe most importantly, was the widespread availability of effective contraception. The birth control pill, introduced in 1960, was a game changer. For the first time in human history, it separated sex from the near inevitability of procreation. This gave individuals, particularly women, unprecedented control over their reproductive lives and dramatically lowered the perceived risks of sex outside of marriage. Second, marriage itself started happening later, much later. In 1956, the median age for a first marriage in the U.S. hit a record low, 22.5 for men and just 20.1 for women. Fast forward to today. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median age for a first marriage in 2024 was 30.2 for men and 28.6 for women. That creates a gap of a full decade, what sociologists call the decade of disconnection, between the onset of puberty and the typical age of marriage. It's a period filled with education, career building, and self-discovery. Expecting widespread abstinence across such a long and formative span of young adulthood became, for many, simply unrealistic. Third, cultural attitudes toward authority and tradition were radically changing. The 1960s and 70s saw a broad questioning of established norms. While religious commitment remains a significant factor, with more devout individuals tending to delay sexual activity, its overall grip on public morality has loosened. For example, a 2020 Pew Research survey found that a majority of U.S. Christians, 57%, say sex between unmarried adults in a committed relationship is sometimes or always acceptable. For the religiously unaffiliated, that number jumps to 79%. This reflects a broader cultural shift from a collective, rules-based morality to one centered on individual autonomy and consent. As premarital sex became the norm, the question shifted from if someone had sex before marriage to how many partners they had. The data here paints a detailed picture of the modern dating experience. Among currently married adults, only about 1 in 5 people have had just one sexual partner in their lifetime, their spouse. Roughly 1 in 3 have had between 2 and 4 partners. 1 in 4 have had 5 to 9 partners. And significantly, about 1 in 5 married adults entered their marriage having had 10 or more sexual partners. This pattern shows no major gender differences in the overall counts. Men and women report similar distributions of lifetime partners. This marks a stark departure from previous generations, where a significant sex gap existed in reported behaviors. The normalization of premarital experience has applied to both men and women, fundamentally reshaping the experience they bring into a marriage. Now, this is where the conversation gets complicated, and we have to be precise. The data we have shows strong correlations, but that doesn't automatically prove causation. Still, the patterns are consistent and worth a look. Across the board, studies show that individuals who marry as virgins have the lowest rates of divorce. One analysis from the Institute for Family Studies found that women who married in the 2000s with no prior sexual partners had only about a 5% chance of divorcing within the first 5 years. But the risk of divorce doesn't just increase in a straight line with each new partner. The relationship is more complex. Studies show that having any premarital partners can more than double the odds of divorce compared to having none. The highest divorce risk is found in those with 9 or more partners. Interestingly, the specific number of partners tied to the highest risk has shifted over time. In the 1980s and 1990s, women with exactly 2 premarital partners had the highest divorce rates, around 28 to 30%. Researchers speculate this could be due to direct comparisons being made to a single other partner. However, in the 2000s, as hookup culture became more widespread, the highest divorce risk shifted to those with 10 or more partners, reaching a rate of 33% in some studies. It's critical to say this doesn't mean having more partners causes divorce. It could be that people who are less inclined towards stable, long-term commitment are also more likely to have more partners and to divorce later. The data shows a link, but it can't definitively tell us why. The effects aren't just limited to divorce statistics. Studies also find links between the number of premarital partners and how happy people say they are in their marriage. For instance, some research suggests that couples who have only ever been sexually active with each other are 2 to 3 times more likely to report being in the highest tiers of marital stability and satisfaction. On the physical health front, the connection is more direct. A higher number of sexual partners mathematically increases a person's exposure and risk of sexually transmitted infections. It's an unavoidable public health reality that accompanies a world with more sexual encounters. Just as this new norm of premarital sex has solidified, a surprising countertrend has emerged among the youngest generation of adults, Gen Z. They seem to be having less sex than millennials and Gen X did at the same age. Data from the University of Chicago's General Social Survey is striking. In 2021, 3 in 10 Gen Z males aged 18 to 25 reported having no sex in the prior year. 1 in 4 Gen Z women said the same. A recent Kinsey Institute study found that more than 1 in 3 single Gen Z adults identify as celibate. This trend started before the pandemic and seems to be driven by what some researchers call a slow life strategy. Young people are taking longer to reach traditional adult milestones like getting a driver's license, moving out, and dating. This sex recession isn't about a return to 1950s morality. Instead, it appears to be linked to a mix of modern factors: more time spent online, anxiety about relationships, and a different approach to dating. Some recent 2024 data, however, suggests this might be reversing again, with Gen Z in relationships reporting more frequent sex, indicating the trends are still very much in flux. From a social taboo to the lived experience of the vast majority, the story of premarital sex in America is one of profound and rapid transformation. Driven by technology, economics, and a revolution in social values, the path to marriage today looks nothing like it did for our grandparents. The data shows this shift isn't without consequences, correlating with measurable differences in marital stability and happiness, even as we navigate these new norms. And just as we've gotten used to this reality, a new generation is beginning to chart its own different course. Before you go, we're curious about real experiences. If you're comfortable, answer the below questions in the comments. You don't have to explain. Simple answers help shape future videos. 1. Did you have sex before marriage? 2. Roughly how many partners did you have before marriage? 3. If you're married, do you regret having premarital sex with someone other than your spouse? Make sure to subscribe for deeper dives into divorce rates, mental health, and STDs. Thanks for watching!